Hello and welcome to the Inner Compass podcast. I am Victoria, founder of the Inner Compass Collective, and this is a space for high-achieving women who are at a crossroads, successful on paper, but sensing something deeper is calling. So if you're at a crossroads in your career or life, if you've outgrown something but you don't yet know what comes next, and you're craving direction that feels aligned instead of forced, then you are in the right place. And here we talk about identity shifts, self-trust, and defining your true north from your own inner compass so that you can consciously design your next chapter without abandoning success and abandoning yourself. So I heard a very interesting term the other day, career grief, and I want to focus this episode on it because it's really, really important. So the woman who was referencing it was talking in terms of the redundancies and job losses that have started kicking up. And she was saying that there's going to be an overwhelming amount of career grief coming as this continues on in terms of the systemic changes in the workforce, AI, and all of these things. And really the career grief is around those who have had the loss of job, feeling the effects and I guess the deep sadness of a loss of income, a loss of meaning, a loss of purpose. I really love the term actually. I've not personally heard grief and career being put together. We all know grief. It's one of the deepest, most complex and painful human emotions, and we tend to tie it into the loss of a loved one. But it's actually a really great term for describing that period where you have either left a career path or you've been ejected out of a career path. It doesn't actually matter which one it is. I have taken an elected career transition into more alignment, and I still felt the grief that she was describing, and I'm going to put my perspective on what this is and what's underneath it. Because ultimately it is a identity, some would say an identity crisis, because this period could be the most difficult to navigate what is going on. And it's also a really amazing opportunity to propel your journey forward if you know what to do with this period that will come up. So whether you've been ejected out of your career, which I personally believe all ejections are redirection, or you've taken the choice to move out of your career, you are going to come up against this. Because what happens and why this is a grief is if you think about, particularly for millennials, which is where this is, the bulk of this is occurring right now, we have been taught and conditioned to believe that our worth and our value as a human being is tied into what we contribute and what we do, how successful we are, status, all of these things. All of that conditioning gets fed into our career path. So if you even go back into, at least when I was growing up, and the fields that garnered the most worth and value tended to be lawyer, doctor as a kid. They've obviously changed and molded. If you think forward to now, it's probably AI, data, engineering, all of these things. They all kind of move through their shifts depending on the generation of where was these career paths that had the most amount of like value and worth and status. And we, as humans, we want people to validate us. We want to be worthy. We want to be valued as a human. And when we are taught that that's how we're going to get it, that's naturally what we're going to chase. And so we end up in these career paths where, whether we're aware of it or not, that's what we are doing. We are in this external trap of validation for our worth and our value. And if you even just think of how you might have been operating in your career, I certainly was running a not enough belief big time, massive overachiever, put so much energy and time into my career. Even when I didn't really like it, I was almost just on autopilot in order to be seen as valued and smart. My biggest one was always that. And so I would forever be like expending a lot of energy and a lot of focus into this path because without me realizing it, that's how I thought I was getting my worth and value as a person. when I was, in that space, that is how I garnered my worth and value. That's how I garnered my success. Like, yes, this is who I am, and it's a part of who I am. But that is where the grief and the break comes from, because your worth and value are not tied into what you do. They are inherently who you are. But we are not conditioned into that, right? We are taught that it is what we do that is going to make us valuable. On the soul journey, or coming into paths that are more meaningful and more connected into our purpose and who we are and what we're here to do, we have to remove all of our attachments to external forms of validation that are not actually true to who we are. They are keeping us attached into a way of being that we have learnt to do and to be in order to kind of fit into what society expects of us. And when we let go of the path that has been feeding that, almost like it is an energetic feed, we let go of it through choice or force, we almost cut off the energy of what we've been used to receiving as our validation that we are worthy and we are valuable. Herein lies the grief, because it is an identity grief. What we have tied who we are into is the career, and we let it go. There is going to be a grief. There is a grief of self. It is an identity grief. This is who I was. It's either gone through force or it's gone because it's not quite it, but you still end up in this space where you haven't fully formed what the true identity is, or the truth of who you are, because there's this gap. And this is where the grief is going to come in thick, and it's going to come in fast. I wasn't aware because I made the choice. I was like, I'm done. I had so much disillusionment. I couldn't even be in my career anymore, or corporate. I just was done. I was like, no, this isn't it. I know I'm here for more. I know there's more meaning. That doesn't make me exempt from the grief, because there's two dynamics here. If you are a high achiever, you naturally would have garnered a level of success in your career that you did actually get validated as being very good at your career, and you knew it. And you take that away and you start a new path, which is naturally, you're not going to have that same cred. You're not going to be as successful initially. You're almost like learning how to ride a bike again. And you kind of strip all that away, and it starts to almost feel like you're building yourself back up again, which in many ways you are, because you're coming from a very different energy. But momentarily you've got no source of external validation and worth and value, because often when you start out, you're not going to be getting that. And a lot, particularly if you choose the business path, you're going to be going at it for a long time before people even pay attention. And that difference, there is grief there, because you've lost all of your, it's not an addiction, but it's just ways that you've learnt that feed your ability to go, I'm successful. And when I lost all of that myself, I felt like a failure. I honestly felt like a big fat failure. And I was not used to being a big fat failure, and I had a big identity crisis. If I had have heard the term grief, that would have really accurately described it, because it almost felt like all forms of external validation that I had attached into without me knowing crumbled. And some I crumbled myself, others crumbled on their own. And then I was almost left with nothing. And the grief and the identity crisis that comes with that is the work. It is big, because you really come to the awareness like, oh my God, I have handed my power over to all of these external things to make me feel like I'm a worthy person. And initially there's going to be a lot of pain with that and a lot of grief, but through the process of allowing it, so sitting with it, and if you do need help, this is what we do inside the Inner Compass Collective. But instead of trying to get out of it, so some people are going to feel that pain, and they're going to try and run back to get a path that gives them the same kind of external validation quickly, because they don't like feeling this. Or you allow it to run the course that it needs to, which will be pain, which is a total, it's almost like the foundations are going and there's a full identity reshift, and you use that time to come back in to yourself. It is all by design, this period, because the grief is the stripping away, and that period is what brings us back into self. Now, when we come back into self and we start to understand and actually physically feel and embody that we are fundamentally worthy and valuable, that there isn't actually anything that we need to do or be in order to have that, like we are already worthy and valuable. If you think of even just a baby just for a second, like how could you think that baby is not worthy and valuable? They haven't even done anything in the planet yet. We come in that way. We are that way. And when you start tapping into that energy and then you create your path, you're not creating your path because it's going to feed anything for you. You're creating it because it's you. And the energy in that is entirely, completely different than what we have been taught to do. Because naturally, obviously, when we are in our power and we don't rely externally on career, relationships, status, money, all of these things to define who we are, rather we define who we are from the inner soul out. That's where we get self-leadership. This is the sovereignty. This is how we start forging our own path rather than being dictated and fitting into what we are told we need to fit into. And we start actually creating the world to fit around us, because even just think about the energy of moving through the world with the belief that you are not worthy and valuable unless you do something versus a belief that you are worthy and valuable no matter what. How would you choose to spend your time in both of those energies? So this is a really, really big one, and it's unavoidable, honestly. It is the identity shift, because I'm not saying you're going to completely drop all forms of validation. You're certainly going to notice it. Like, it still comes up for me because it's like an energetic feed or an addiction that we have, and it feels good, so we keep chasing it. If you just even think of likes on social media, it's the quickest one I can go to, where it gives you that visceral validation feeling. But ultimately, it's the most impermanent form of worth that we can ever tie ourselves into, because it shifts and it changes, and it's exactly what is happening now, which is why this woman was talking about the career grief coming, because we have all been taught there were certain paths to follow to garner your value and your worth, and now they're shifting and changing. They're not stable. They never have been. The only stable source of validation, approval, worth that you can ever get is from yourself. And when you truly, I'm not fully there yet, but when you really meet that, you move through life completely self-leadership. You do things because they add to your life, not because you are lacking. Totally different energy. And that is the soul path. The soul knows that you are not lacking. The soul already knows that. And when we can step into and create careers from this energy, we come at them through pure service, pure joy, pure fulfillment, because there's nothing we need to gain from it in terms of filling our gaps and our lack. We are doing it for the sake of expansion and literal service, like actual service, when we come from this space. And so how to move through this period? Well, if you do need support, this is what we touch on at the beginning of the Inner Compass Collective, is the identity shift and the release of these ways that we have been outsourcing our power and how to bring them back in. So if that's resonating, then that's definitely a space and container that is for this exact thing, but then creating the path from inner authority, from that I am already whole, complete, valuable. And then what do I want to do from that space rather than trading? But it's really about allowing the time and the space for this to process, to understand what is going on. In essence, a crumbling of all external forms of worth and value, in order to come back into the awareness and understanding of the truth that you never needed those in the first place, because the worth and the value is already within. And I'd say that is the most important focus when we are coming into internal authority as well is really like that awareness piece. You'll be aware of it before you can embody it. The embodiment takes the time to really actually go, no, this is really the truth, because we've been living in the opposite way for so long. And so I'll share some tools in the comments as well that will help you, the inner compass reset, to come back into authority. The final thing I want to say is that if you are moving through this, just trust that this is normal and this is very much part of the process, and really look at it through that lens of, I am being guided to let go of all of the ways that I have externally driven meaning and value from, in order to come back into the truth of self. And it is gonna feel heavy and sad, and this is where a lot of the disillusionment will come up, because you're like, I have literally spent however long living this way or feeding this way, and this isn't even stable. What we've been taught is stable is not stable anymore, and the only way to get a stable source of validation and worth is in yourself, and to stop handing that out to others is really what this grief is inviting us into. It is all part of the process. It is all part of the design. And you've got this, I promise.